You recently released a new book, so tell me about this book and what people can expect from it.
So, my new chapbook of poems, Body Facts, tells the story of a speaker who is Korean American woman and body. It weaves together Korean history and aesthetics, the speaker's childhood and family stories of growing up in Midwestern, the Midwestern US foreign policy with North Korea, and the ideas of the body as human, land, object, and force.
For people who may not be familiar with this type of genre of storytelling, tell me a little bit about this genre and what inspired you to write this story.
That's a great question. So, I was really inspired by documentary poems, so types of poems that recover historical and archival details. In this case, um, the stories of my motherland, North and South Korea, familial and national histories, and the genre of poems as actually an outlet to think through cultural and humanistic questions of what does it mean to inhabit a human body? What does the body mean as land? What is a body possessed or dispossessed or plundered as a result of war and colonization, but also the idea of the body and the human body as refuge, as something that transcends cultural boundaries.
What are some stories and poems that you have produced for this book and some of some of your favorites that you have written?
I ventured through Korean history. I have poems about um, the Korean War and different Korean revolutionaries. I use tweets from former President Donald Trump and the discourse of North Korea. There's one poem called Plunder, which specifically speaks to the dispossession of Korean land and bodies during the Japanese occupation, which is still, and then the Korean War, which is still technically ongoing. And the poem Plunder thinks through war and histories of colonization and the speaker's childhood memories, American plastic surgery experimentation on Korean subjects as a result of the war, and the fetishization of women's faces and bodies as objects to be modified and plundered. So I'm really writing from different perspectives of the body both as human, the body as the pressures we place on our bodies, and then um, geographically the body, such as the Korean Peninsula or the continental US.
Would you say the story is more important even after what has been a year of pent up hate against Asian Americans?
Yeah, and there are some poems in the collection that speak to that, an etymology of the Orient. And I have a poem of the eponymous title, Body Facts, that thinks through this idea of an Asian person, an Asian American person, an Asian presenting person being vilified or reviled due to what they represent as a viral signifier of COVID. And in the wake of the rise in anti Asian racism, and then more catastrophically, right, the Atlanta shootings and the Indianapolis shootings, I think it really speaks back to this history in which Asian American voices have long been marginalized and not really incorporated into mainstream coverage of what it means to be American, right?
What are some common misconceptions that you face, especially as an Asian American, when it comes to stories about culture and stories about historical events?
I think some common problems are a lack of understanding of these histories. So there's gaps in knowledge and the way in which I, as somebody who was born in Chicago and is a citizen of the States, oftentimes I have to like navigate this border of people not understanding, people assuming that I'm a foreigner, that I do not speak English, that this border I have to kind of cross, this double consciousness of kind of being in two cultures at once, right? Other things, being a model minority and being this kind of good immigrant who came here the quote unquote right way, which then creates this distance and then really erases other groups and creates this racial capitalist system in which individuals and their worth to American meritocracy reinforce, more white dominant and white supremacist ideologies. There are a lot that I unpack in this collection: perpetual foreigners, stereotypes of Asian people as really a very limited view of what we bring to American culture through things such as foreign policy, martial arts, specifically Asian women as objects, and fetishization of us as something different than an American or an American body, right? And those are some common things that I tackle in this collection.
How much of an impact did your role as a professor at the University of Toledo play in this book?
By working here alongside students in a community that is actually in the same state that I also grew up in and started these poems, has really been a good, given me groundedness as I embark on this journey of weaving these different stories, ancestral, familial, national, about being kind of inhabiting different cultures at once. So working at the Toledo and being able to teach and research alongside so many of great colleagues and students and staff has really given me a sense of community that has helped me really funnel years of thinking and reading and writing and research into what I think is a collection that really started around 13, 14 years ago.
Additionally, where can people find this book if they want to take a look at it and, really immerse themselves in it?
So the book will be released on June 15th by Diode Editions. I have an early copy here. You can follow me on Twitter at Joey Kim, and there is a pre-order link as well, which I can share with you to pre-order it for June 15th.
Professor Joey Kim of the University of Toledo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jaden.